Hey everybody, what is up? It's Antonio. Welcome to episode 34 of Teach Play Disc Golf. I made sure to say that this time because last week, episode 33 with Sullivan, I did not do my usual introduction. And in the editing process, I felt super weird. I was like, oh, that sounds weird. So I made sure to say it today. But guys, we have another guest on the show today, and I'm so excited. Today's guest is a friend of mine who's been on the channel before, not so much. Talking to you guys, but more so talking to me. We got Kade Capps here. He's invested hours just talking form with me, helping me improve it, texting, videos, all this kind of stuff. And Kade, so happy to have you on the show. You've been on the biomechanics video, the 11 tips that I published about a year and a half or so ago. And that video, I think, has helped so many people. I'm so glad to have you on here so that you can talk to the people themselves. Thanks for joining the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been so cool just watching you grow. And I mean, you message me periodically and give me like form updates, and I'm like, dude, this guy's just making it right now, you know. And then it's
Thank
like
you.
I always have so many compliments, and then we always just have like one or two things maybe to
Yeah,
work on, and that's it, you know. But thanks for
yeah,
having me on here, man.
yeah. Of course, I always appreciate the buildup of confidence. Like, hey, okay, I'm going in the right direction. But I always like knowing like, okay, there's something else that I can be improving on, and it's not even like a nitpicky thing, but just a like continuing to build and solidify the fundamentals. It's super encouraging and it's always super helpful. So I'm so grateful you're here, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk to you guys about a couple things today. We have some questions from Discord. Uh, so if you want to do that, if you want to have questions for future guests, join my Discord server. Link is in the description. And actually, before I get into the rest of the outline, I don't want to forget to mention, guys, Kate and I, class in session. It's the for members and subscribers. We had some amazing conversation about the entire backhand form, broke it down. We learned a little bit about how Kade got into disc golf. So you definitely want to become a subscriber and become a member to hear about some awesome tips that are exclusive for members and subscribers. We won't be talking about them here, but he breaks down some biomechanics on how to use our bodies, natural movements to throw efficiently. Super, super helpful stuff. So make sure you join to get access to that. Back to the outline, we're going to have the Discord questions. Then we're going to talk about another disc golf skill. And this is something that I actually thought about from watching one of Cade's videos, changing the way you do field work. Field work has this nasty connotation for some people. It's like, I want to go play disc golf. I don't want to be in an empty field. So Cade's going to talk about how we can change doing that. And then we're going to review what is currently Cade's favorite disc, the Infinite Discs Chariot. And that'll be the episode 34 for this week. So I'm super excited, guys. Let's go ahead and let's get right into it. Alrighty, man. So from Discord, we got a question that I want to ask. This once again comes from Ryan. He is always asking questions for the guests on the show, and they are always phenomenal. Always appreciate your input, Ryan. So, Kate, the question that I have for you, or that Ryan has for you, is what are some keys or triggers you think of when practicing your throw that everyone could use? Kind of like maybe like biomarkers like Tai talks about, or just things that kind of help you get your timing in place.
For sure. So the main things that I'm always thinking about is how do I create an effortless or a push button throw? Because oftentimes we see all these different videos and we have five, six different swing thoughts in our head. And
Mhm.
I feel like that throws us out of sync more than anything else. So the concept that I always explain to people is your best throw is in there somewhere. That needs to be your default throw of whatever it's been, like you threw the straightest, the furthest, whatever your definition of whatever you're working on that day. That's your default throw, and your job is just to keep returning back to that. The
Mhm.
issue we do is we have that default throw, and we have one bad throw, and we create a connection back to that default. So, or a connection or a correction back to it, right? So we
Mhm.
say, oh, my elbow wasn't up enough or something like that, right? And then we have another bad throw, and then now we've got two things that we're thinking about, and three, four, five, and
Mm.
then eventually you get completely disconnected from this throw instead of
Yeah.
anytime that you're having a bad throw, bad throws happen. They happen on the
Yeah.
course, they happen in field work, they happen in wherever. They just happen. And your job is to say, that's not who I am. That's not my throw. And my job is just to return back to that, you know? And so the key things that I'm always thinking about is just returning back to that. I'll have literally for me personally, as far as technique goes, I will focus on one thing for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks even, where I won't
Mhm.
really tweak anything other than like once per time there. Now, granted, I'm a little bit different
Right.
than other people, but if
Right.
you are focusing on multiple things, you're focusing
Mhm.
on nothing basically because you're not
Yeah.
prioritizing anything. So the tip that I would give for everybody is just hone in on that one thing. Maybe it's something you saw in your video from last time, and really just get good at that and figure out
Mm.
how do I make that a part of my stock
Right.
throw.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll jump in and say, like, as an example, I've talked about this a lot the last month or two. My elbow dropping on a lot of my throws, and that's having me rotate too quickly and over rotate in my upper body, and then I end up losing all the momentum I've been building. And so the one singular thing that I've been working on and really just thinking about is keeping that elbow up and out all the way through my throat. And every time I have this, like you said, this ideal default throw, and I'm making the correction, I'm trying not to think too much about anything else. And I keep coming back to that default throw because it's just that one thing I'm focusing on. So that's a great tip. And because, like you're talking about, there's always going to be something different that we're trying to fine tune and refine. And so being able to break it down one at a time, I think is super helpful. um, Now, anybody who's gonna go and follow you after this on Instagram and everything, and they're gonna look at you and be like, "Dang, this guy's got some muscle tone to him. Like this dude is jacked." I mean, clearly he throws far because he hits the gym, he works out hard, he's in great shape, so that's why he throws far. And it's like, okay, definitely that's going to be part of it, right? Having good muscle, having good bodily training. But we see guys like Kyle Klein who just won USDGC, and Kyle might do some working out, but we see different body types and fitness levels all around disc golf. So one thing that you mentioned to me is that you get asked a lot about this correlation between working out and disc golf. Do they work together? Is it more about flexibility? So what are your thoughts as somebody who has spent a lot of time with your bodybuilding and weightlifting background, uh, d- you know, working on your physique and using disc golf, which is a very like fluid, loose, flexible motion. How do you kind of talk people through working out and disc golf?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a challenge for me to start out with like getting out of the muscling the disc, right?
Hmm.
Because for me, I was able to muscle the disc 350, 400 with really bad technique. And
Right.
so while muscles can, or big muscles or powerful muscles can contribute to a good throw, it's more
Right.
so about that leverage, and then they can be beneficial. Go look at like Ezra Adderhold. Obviously, he crushes the disc, but you don't
Yeah.
have to. You can be an angle master
Hmm.
like Eagle McMahon, and
Yeah.
so, but whenever we're in the gym, we aren't necessarily training as much for performance or distance or anything like that. Even though there are benefits, and we if we want to work on those benefits, we can work more on just like speed, strength. So how quickly I can move. So moving quickly in the gym, throwing things around, things
Hmm.
like that. All of those are going to be beneficial. But the time that I spent related to disc golf in the gym is different. It's more so about rehab, prehab, and making sure that I'm training the muscles that I don't train during disc golf. And so, what you'll see me doing a lot of is focusing on the muscles that decelerate. So, for example, on forehands, we're really good at throwing in this direction, but what about practicing the deceleration and making sure that I've got control and stability and mobility through those joints? And so, oftentimes, whenever we talk about training specifically for disc golf, there's a couple things. I mean, obviously, we'll train like the explosive and plyometrics and jumping and all of that, but I
Right.
hone in more. Like I've coached a couple touring pros actually on in disc golf, and we've honed in more on making sure that they're not going to be injured throughout the season. That's
Mm.
massive to make sure that we do.
Yeah.
And so all the time we're basically training in the opposite direction of what their disc golf does for them. So for backhand, we twist in the other direction to make sure that we can do that. So any of the
Mm,
exercises that are doing that for you, so anything that is external rotation, anything that is going to twist you in the opposite direction, in
right.
addition to, like I said, those performances is absolutely necessary to make sure that you stay healthy, especially if you're playing
Yeah.
multiple rounds per week.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so sounds like to me there's obviously some weight involved here, but a lot of it has to do with you said rotation a lot. Sounds
Mm,
like there's got to be some flexibility involved in
a little
that
bit.
kind of thing, and you're looking more for focusing on movement rather than strength and weight and those kind of things.
Right.
You want to be able to keep those muscles loose. So is that right? Is that kind of what we
Yeah.
want to be focusing on?
Yeah, and kind of what you said, like for me being able to, if I were able, I can't, but if I were able to squat 500 pounds, that's not going to help me near as much as being able to squat 300 pounds very quickly, and just
Right,
launching the weight up. That's much more useful for me because it actually changes the structure of our muscle. If you want to go deeper into that, then
right.
you can, but it changes the structure of our muscles and make it so that they contract faster, which
Okay.
is kind of what we're looking for in disc golf is just power. You
Okay.
can see this is I do this with all my baseball players as well. How fast can you move weight?
Mhm.
And we aren't really working more on the top end of squatting 500 pounds.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. That is good to know. Um, it's not just the throwing motion we want to train, it's that recovery. It's the ooh, deceleration uh, of all those movements. So that is super helpful. So speaking of form, speaking of, you know, disc golf skills and working out and everything, let's go and let's talk about this skill that you've mentioned on your channel. I'll introduce it here and then I'll let you take it away. So, on a recent Instagram reel, you talked about changing the way you do field work. And by changing the way you do field work, you meant spend time on the course. But you weren't talking about playing a full round of golf. You were talking about basically grabbing 10 discs or something of a similar stability or all the same molds and going to a specific hole with a specific shot at a local course that you're like, you know what? Every time I come here, I struggle with this shot, or this is just a weakness of mine. I need to work on this. So, what are the benefits, the downside of instead of going to an open field and working on that skill? Let's say you struggle with 200-foot approach shots. Why do you think it's better to go to a course where you can work on that 200-foot approach shot versus an open field?
For sure. So I say for me, it's better. I feel like there's kind of two types of people. There are people that are
Hmm.
really good at being able to visualize obstacles out in a field. I've
Right,
never really had that skill. Like I could kind of say, oh, that leaf is one pole and the other is another
right,
pole or tree or whatever, and I got to throw through that or whatever.
right,
For me, I was expending mental energy to be able to visualize those. And even though the field provides a lot of flexibility, especially whenever you're doing technique and like focusing in on one specific thing, for me, I prefer to go onto the course and say, for example, those 200-foot approach shots. I go and I put myself in a tough situation or a situation that I'd be in tournament and be like, man, this again. And I
yeah,
bring a stack of discs. I bring different types of discs and stuff like that, and I execute it multiple times because I've created this
hmm,
scenario, whether it's from the tee box or somewhere in the hole, or if I've made it my own
right,
hole. I've created these constraints that I have to execute. Otherwise, I'm going to get
hmm,
immediate feedback on the hole. And so, for somebody that struggles with like just visualizing a course in front of me,
right,
it's so
right,
much easier for me to be able to do something like that. And it's not that it's necessarily better. It's just I I heard about field work all the time, and I work on like giant sweeping spike hyzers or distance or anything like that. But anytime I had to work on things like shot shaping, it was just an absolute pain because I was like, I think I did
right.
good. I can't really tell. I
Yeah,
have a I have a
yeah,
leaf to be able to compare it to, but
right,
not it's
right.
not quite the same. So while I do think that field work is still important and should be in anybody's training regimen if they're trying to reach the highest level, I think
Right.
getting on course and spending some time on the holes, especially the ones that you struggle with, maybe it's that straight 200 footer, that seems to haunt everybody. That tends to be a very efficient use of your time.
Cool. So definitely sounds like there's a lot of benefits. Do you think there are any? downsides to adding this? Like, I don't know if this might be a perceived downside for you, but I initially think if I go to a course and I'm working on this one hole and I'm throwing 10, 15 discs, I'm like, what happens when somebody comes through, play the kind of like, what are some of the downsides or your experiences with that kind of thing, so that when we all go out to the course, we kind of maybe know how to handle it.
Yeah, so number one would be ideally don't pick a busy course. Like for example, Alex Clark is a course that's pretty close
Yep.
to me. That's
Yeah.
pretty short, and I think it's the most popular course in Texas. And I would
Yes.
never do any practice there, and it's just because I'm going to be in everybody's way. I'd much rather
Yeah.
go across the street to Town Lake, where I'm going to have. If I sat there for an hour, I'll probably have 10 people go through me, and I just anytime somebody walks up, I'm like, hey, I'm just throwing. Come on through, please. Like
Yeah.
most of the time I haven't had anybody be like, "What the heck are you doing?" Like, no, nobody's like cussing me out for throwing
Right.
10 discs on there. It's just remaining respectful and recognizing that the course is not just yours. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, some people will even laugh and be like, "Man, that's a lot of discs" or something like that. And you're like, "Yeah, I need
Yeah.
a lot of practice." So,
Yeah.
but as you can tell, I'm speaking from experience, right? So,
Right,
but
right.
uh, oftentimes it's like just again, I have to remind you, don't practice. You don't have to practice from the tee box, but also don't put yourself in a really stupid position where like you're somewhere in a hole where nobody can see you, and you're going to get either hurt somebody else or hurt yourself.
Yeah.
As long as you're staying semi competent on the course, then
Mhm.
I think that it's just good to train on course. Um, one of the limitations, I think that you asked this as well, is also the benefit is that there's so many constraints. Is that
Mhm.
you sometimes your course doesn't offer a specific shot, and
Right.
so you are going to have to get out to the field. So, like for example, I'm trying to play on tour, and there aren't very many courses around here that have a 500-foot spike hyzer. You know, there's very
Right.
few that have it actually, or maybe I
Yeah.
have to back up on the course or just go out to the field at that time. Limitations might be something like that to
Right.
what your course has to offer. But overall, if you're using both of them and you're staying
Mhm.
respectful on the course, I think it's probably one of the best ways to practice.
Very cool, very cool. So, we wanna implement this. You kind of already hinted at this, still doing field work, traditional field work, but how often should maybe somebody go to a course and work on a specific skill like this to replace going to a field and working on that skill?
Yeah, so I'll talk about me personally, and then also my recommendations for other people because they're slightly different based upon your needs. So for
Mhm.
me, I'll go out to the field once every other week, maybe, and that's primarily where my technique work is done. So if I need to go and break down form or I'm working on something specifically, and I say every other week, it can be upwards of like every 6 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Anytime that I need a technique session, recently, it's been my forehand that I'll go out to the field for a little bit more, and I'm just really trying to figure something out and hone in
Mhm.
on kind of what that problem is. On course, it's just going to frustrate me, and it's not going to be something that's
Right.
beneficial. But whenever I'm trying to develop a specific shot, I'm spending time on course, and so um, it just depends on what you need. If your form is like my upper body's going this way, my lower body's going this way, sitting on a tee pad and doing 10 shots just to try to get
Mhm.
that shot shape, it's probably not your biggest issue.
Right.
It's being able to be self-aware and say, hey, listen, this is my biggest weak point right now. I'm going to attack it until it's a strength. And then I'm going to
Mhm.
identify weak point number two. And then I'll attack it and make that my strength. And
Yeah.
so we talked about this actually in the classes in session. And so I kind of want to hint at it here,
Yeah.
which is basically we don't want to work on 10 things at once. We want
Yeah.
to work on one thing at once, which is huge. And we go into much more depth on it in there. So I'll let them
Yeah.
go on there to
Yeah.
get
No,
that.
I awesome. I love the reference, and yeah, just that singular focus. As I was prepping for this show and getting these notes down, yesterday I went and played, and over the last couple of weeks at this course near me here in Nashville called Liberty Park. It's like one of my favorite courses all time. It's a little 10-hole course, but the shots are so unique and different. For a while there, the one specific hole, hole 7, is an uphill backhand anhyzer. You could do a forehand flat shot to hyzer, but really the backhand anhyzer is ideal for it. And I was always throwing it really well. But the last like few months, honestly, I've just been really struggling. And once I saw this video and prepping for this show and talking with you now, I'm like, that's right. I'm gonna go to that course one of these days,
Yeah,
and I'm just gonna sit on hole 7. It's like a 190-foot hole,
yeah,
170-foot hole, and just work on it because I've lost the touch that I kind of need with it, and got to figure out some of the timing. And and I've never thrown a lot of backhand anhysers to begin with, and so it's just going to be super helpful to be able to actually dial that in. Where if I'm on a field, I'm not going to have a 170, 190-foot uphill backhand anhyzer to work on. And so I'm super excited to take this skill and really work on that and those kinds of things. So what is the shot that you are currently working on when you go to a course and are tackling something? Like, is there one specific skill, that one thing we're talking about, that you're trying to dial in and really feel comfortable with?
yeah. For me, it's primarily been up shots right now, specifically those straight up shots. So if I've got a tunnel that's like
Mm.
200 feet,
Yeah.
at Town Lake, hole 5 is like my
Uh-huh.
absolute nemesis hole. It's one that, like, if you're going to be a touring pro, you have to be able to execute that shot. That needs to be second nature. You don't even need to think about
Yeah.
it; just get it done. And so it's like, again, like we were talking about, I'm gonna any of the holes that I step up to and I get that pit in my stomach, like maybe I don't hit this one. That's
Mhm.
immediately where I'm going. Wherever I've got any fear, discomfort, anything like that,
Yeah.
that's immediately where I'm running to. Same thing with like putting. Is if I really feel uncomfortable with downhill putts this past weekend at VPO, there were a couple downhill putts. I was like, yeah, I don't really like it.
Yeah.
I've been drilling the snot out of those. It's like a David
Yeah.
Goggins kind of thing where he's saying whenever your body tells you like, hey, you don't want to be there, that's where you run to.
Yeah.
That's any of those shots. But for me, it's been those 200-foot
Yeah.
straight shots.
Yeah. No, those can be so intimidating too when you have just so much on the line. Uh,
Hmm.
VPO, I've never, for Am Weekend, I never got to play VPO, but I've played Veterans Park, one of my favorite Texas courses. So unique compared to what else is in the Dallas
Oh yeah.
area. And
Hmm.
so technically Arlington, I guess, is what it would actually be, but still
Yeah.
such a cool course, one of my favorites. And yeah, those downhill putts, because there's so much more elevation there, and it's not grass, it's rock and dirt.
Hmm.
And those missed downhill putts can be so punishing. It's
Yep.
funny because on the flip side, I'm over here like, okay, when I think about my putting, and I was just working on this earlier this evening, uphill putts. Not even something super steep like, oh, the pin of the basket is where my head is, but just like 6 to 12 inches. The last couple rounds I played, I've just been really struggling with those. And it's been one of those, like, it's been struggling so bad that I literally went today and simulated
Yeah.
uphill
Yeah.
putting to
100%.
work on that. And it's just I love that idea of going to the field, excuse me, going to the course, working on a specific shot, getting comfortable with that shot, or at least finding the disc that you have confidence in, and same thing with putting. So when you go to a hole, and this will be, I guess, one of the last questions I have here for this skill. When you go to a hole and you're working on this, um, do you bring only one mold and just throw that mold because you're like, hey, this is my straight mid range for this 250, 270-foot shot that, and I know I want to throw this disc for this shot shape? Or do you say, you know what, let me also practice hyzer flipping an understable mid or a putter, and maybe working on flexing an overstable mid, or slowing down a fairway driver? Like, do you bring multiple discs with you to work on it,
Hmm.
or do you say, let me take this one disc for this one shot and just dial that in? How do you handle that?
Sure. So I actually have two bags. I have the luxury to be able to have that. I have a tournament bag and a practice bag.
Mhm.
Tournament bag goes with me everywhere. So whether I'm actually pulling all the discs out and putting them into my practice bag, which has more space. So I always
Mhm.
have those with me because those need to be the discs that are my babies, that are like,
Yeah.
I know these discs. So
Yeah.
me going and grabbing a bunch of other plastic that I don't necessarily know, with that,
Right.
it isn't super beneficial. With that being said, taking duplicates or triplicates of
Uh-huh.
each one of those can be really nice. If I know that I'm going to be going and working on straight mid-range shots, I'm going to pack in 5, 6, 7 extra of those mid ranges, and then maybe a couple extra on either side of those. So, like you were saying, add a couple extra flippy mids, a couple
Mm,
extra overstable mids, and just kind of figure out, because sometimes you are trying to force a shot. Let's say you're taking a straight to overstable
yeah.
mid and you're trying to throw it straight, and you realize maybe I should be flipping something up. And
Yeah.
so I always kind of like try to work inside of kind of a bubble and area
Mhm.
and so maybe try a little faster, a little slower, and just because that unlocks new capabilities for you. This is kind of also where it goes into trying out new plastic or trying your friends' discs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For example, if you don't have a tilt in the, or if you've never thrown a tilt before, you're going to unlock some new shots with that. Are they going to be useful to you?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Probably
One of
not.
one of my buddies, Jaden, he threw his tilt 3 times this week, and it makes no sense how it
Wow.
worked, but he made it work. So and it worked for
Really?
him. So it's like, and dude, that's a whole different story by itself. But
Yeah.
like, it's also kind of an experimentation where, again,
Yeah.
if I'm going to sit there and spend some time on it, I want to hit my what I know that I want to practice. But I'm going to throw a couple extra in there. They're going to be a little bit different and see if I can learn something new. Because maybe I
Right.
figure out that straight shot needs to be a little bit more flipped up. And guess what? Next
Mm.
practice session, I bring a few more flippy ones out there, and I
Yeah.
get up to that situation, and I'm like, it's a straight 200-foot tunnel. Maybe I throw a flippier putter or something like that instead of throwing
Yeah.
my straight one. It makes it a little bit easier, something like that.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I appreciate you breaking this down, Kay. This is super helpful. Changing the way we do field work, guys. It doesn't only have to be out in an open soccer field or baseball field, in the outfield. You can go to the course and work on that. Take some discs, work on a specific shot. Do be careful though, like Kate said. Don't be, if you have a big dog leg and it's a blind corner, don't be chilling on that blind corner because the people coming up on the tee pad aren't going to see you. So be smart with it. There's a lot of benefits to it. Do be careful and definitely check it out. I'm going to be working on. I'm super excited. Here in Nashville, we're Central Time, but we're so close to the Eastern Time zone. The sunset today was at 4:47, and it's only going to get earlier. Yeah, so it's been brutal. So Monday through Friday, I'm pretty much just going to be at my home, working on my practice basket, and I got a pitching net that I've had for a year or two now, and just throwing into that for 20 minutes a day and just working on those things. But on the weekends, I'll definitely be taking advantage of some of these things. So I'm super excited to work on that. I appreciate you, Cade, for going through all that. Guys, if you need any help with these skills, you can join my Discord server. You can send in videos. We have a great community there that's constantly helping people. Or you can send me a video on GiveGo and I can coach you, help you on whatever skill you might be wanting. And you can get your first session for free with the code Ruggiero. This it's in the description as well with the link there. Now, when we were talking about the disc golf skill, Cade, we mentioned some straight mid ranges, maybe even slightly flippy, depending on how beat in they are. And a couple days ago, I asked you, what is your favorite disc? And you said the Infinite Discs Chariot. So I'm super excited that we are going to go ahead and review the Infinite Discs Chariot. So with that, it's a 5 speed, 5 glide, 0 turn, 1 fade based on flight numbers, what I saw on Infinite Discs. Now, outside of that in the description, I have no idea how this disc actually flies, never held it. I've heard a lot of great things about it. So I'm going to let you take it away here, man. Talk to us about the Chariot, what it feels like, what kind of throws you like to do with it, what's your range for this mid range? Understanding that your max distance is pretty high up there, so I think it's going to be a little bit different for some people. But just kind of giving us an idea of like, hey, if we want to try this, what is the ideal range to throw it? So go ahead
Yeah,
and take it away, man.
for sure. So first off, like the neutral mid range needs to be your favorite disc because you can do
Hmm.
so much with it. If you go back and look at any of your bogeys during the round, chances are you could have gone mid range, and took it. They're taking a par. That's just the reality of it. So that's why one of the reasons why it's my favorite. So I actually have it here. The Chariot. The reason that I like it, really quick. Rumor has it that this is the Discmania MD3. Feels
Mm,
pretty similar. Flies pretty similar for me.
okay.
One of the reasons that I like it is it kind of sits perfectly between a buzz and a rock. And so it has it's like a buzz with a micro bead, if you will, and it's just
Okay.
a little bit more overstable. And the reason that I like that for me specifically is my arm slot is a little bit flatter, and I prefer to release things flatter rather than on hyzer and
Mhm.
flip them up. So that my preference is just like being able to hit them and leave them on an angle for the entire time, and then that micro bead kind of allows for it to start to slow down and will correct if I get over on it a little bit too much back to flat.
Mhm.
So it's anytime that I need to leave a disc on one angle the entire time, that this is the disc that I'm going to reach for. And so I'll bump up to a mid range from anywhere from like 300, and I'll go all the way up to again, depending on the course of the shot, all the way up to 400 for me. But
Wow.
anytime like for me, a lot of times I'm using my putters like mid ranges because the putter stays in a nice narrow throwing column. But the nice thing
Yeah.
about these is that I can stick them up in the air, and since they're wider, they're heavier, they're anytime
Mhm.
that there's wind, you're going to see me come out with a mid range. And so um, for me, this this mid range, it fits my hand nice, and it's one of those ones I can just leave on an angle, glide for days, like rivals the
Yeah.
buzz and glide. That was the only issue I had with the rock, is it just didn't have enough glide for me.
Okay.
So this one sat really
Because I know
nicely in
you
that
threw the
slot.
rock for a long time. I literally sent you the script, and I was like, "Favorite disc, rock?" Question mark. So, okay, so you like the
Yeah,
Chariot. Does it fly straighter than a rock? Like
it's
a new
well,
rock?
so if compared to a Champion Rock 3, I would say, yeah, or a Star Rock 3, it's a little bit straighter.
Okay.
It's close. Like I said, it sits right between a Buzz and a
Okay.
Rock. So like that Buzz,
Mhm.
um, they'll kind of flip up on you. If you get them over, they're going to stay over the whole time. Whereas
Yeah.
this one kind of starts
Yeah.
to come back to flat, kind of like a Rock would.
Okay.
To me, it just married them perfectly in the
Yeah.
center. So
Okay.
if you haven't really found a camp with the Buzz or the Rock, like
Right.
Chariot might be the disc for
The
you.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. So when you're, let's talk about that slot in your bag with this. So you have this straight mid range that you feel like, I mean, you can throw it upwards to 400 feet. So you can do a lot with this disc. Um, how do you build around a disc like that when you can throw it so far, do so many different things with it? I'm sure you can throw it on hyzer. It might flip up, but it's not going to turn over on you. It sounds like it'll have some fade to it. And Anheuser, it sounds like has enough stability and integrity to finish flat and not cut roll. So really this workhorse of a mid range. What do you have on the sides of it to kind of um, compensate for what it can't do? How do you build
Yeah,
around it?
for sure. So I don't actually have anything more understable than it, and that's just
Okay.
because I use the putter in that slot. So I'll use a proxy, and a proxy is like a
Yeah.
hybrid between a putter and a mid range. Honestly, it's a
Yeah.
3 speed, and it kind of if I need to throw a shot that's flipping and turning the whole time, then
Mhm.
I'm just going to go down to that putter. As far as on the more overstable, I have a Lucidex Vertex, which is something that I can just hit on Annie, and it is going to reliably come out and give me a little bit extra shape. And then I go all the way up to a Justice, which is just a meat hook of a mid range,
Yeah.
and that's the one where if I need to put it on an extreme flex line. And
Mhm.
then, like, for me, generally speaking, I'm picking discs more so based upon what kind of torque they can handle, as
Mhm.
well as the shape that I want, and less on distance, because I just with the capability, my distance capabilities and being able, I've thrown putters 400 plus feet before, and
Yeah.
it's that sometimes it just doesn't, like, I even I don't need to bump up to a destroyer to do something like that. So for me, I'm gonna pick discs more so based upon the shape of them and less
Okay.
on the speed. And by the shape, I mean the shot shape and how they're gonna fight
Right.
and do things like that. So
Right.
um, like maybe I bump up to an eagle, which is my straight fairway, if I want something that's gonna float straight for a while and then hook up pretty decent at the end, instead
Yeah.
of being straight,
Yeah.
straight, straight, and keeps being straight. So
Yeah.
that's kind of either side of them for me.
Right.
But yeah, I'm a little bit
Yeah.
unique in that way, I would say,
Well,
though.
it's also one of those things where it's so cool listening to somebody um, that has more distance and power and better technique, honestly, than I think the majority of disc golfers, I mean, there's a reason why the 1,000 rated and plus, and right around there, 990 and plus, like it's such a small percentage of disc golfers. And it's just really cool to be able to talk with someone in that area because the way you build your bag is very different from the vast majority of ways that amateurs are building their bag. I even think about how different for me. I'm building my bag and I'm not thinking so much about, well, I can throw all of these 400 feet. So it's more about shot shape. I'm thinking, no, I can't throw them all 400 feet. So what's going to give me more distance? Okay, this disc will give me more distance while still being controllable. And I'll be able to work it on a hyzer angle to get it to flip up and those kind of things. So, like, my brain isn't anywhere like my strategy for building my bag is so different, but it's
Yeah,
really cool to hear like, yeah, I can throw a putter 400 and a destroyer 400, but the way they're going to fly is going to be completely different. And so it's about shot selection, which is
yeah,
still very important for everyone, but it's very cool to get that insight and to just kind of hear um, someone who's sort of living that out and experiencing that when building their bag.
for sure.
Very, very cool. Very cool,
And
man.
a quick side note is
Yeah.
I get to play with a lot of pros that are 1,000 plus rated and everything like that,
Yeah.
and not all of them have 600 in the bag. Not everybody
Yeah.
has that, or being able to throw a putter 400 feet. So it's not that you're necessarily required to do that. That's kind of my
Hmm.
play style. I like to hit gaps fast and hard. And some people are really good at floating them up. The first person that comes to mind is like Freddie Meza.
Hmm.
He used to throw katanas, which, if you know what a katana is, it's
Yeah.
like a flippier race of sorts. I don't even think I could throw that disc with enough finesse to be able to make it do anything close to what I want it to do. And so it's like,
Right.
oftentimes we see a lot of newer players picking discs based upon their favorite pro. And it's like, it's
Right.
not about pick or throwing the disc. It's the disc that the pro is throwing is the best for them, not for you.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
huge because, like, I can't encourage people enough to not do what I do,
Right.
rather to find
Yeah.
what works for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, dude. I appreciate that insight. And guys, if you want to check out the Chariot, you can go to Infinite Discs. But this section is sponsored by OTB, and OTB does have the Infinite Discs Chariot. So you can go ahead and go there and save on shipping with my discount code. So go ahead and check that out. I've been with OTB for 3 years, and it's been awesome working with them. So I appreciate them. And that's basically the show for this week, guys. Kate, super happy to have you on here. I really appreciate it. I know I've shouted out a couple of sponsors. I know you have a couple sponsors. Before I wrap up here, go ahead and shout them out and let people know if they want to support you, who to reach out to.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I'm at Kade Capps on everything, on Facebook,
Hmm.
Instagram, and I might be starting up YouTube a little bit more here. I kind of want to do some more long form content because
Yeah.
I'm tired of doing 15-second videos. It's hard
Yeah.
to convey that knowledge. But Cade Capps everywhere, and then a huge shout out to Armory Disc Golf. They've been supporting me for so long. Could not ask for a greater group of guys. Like, um, just super awesome dudes. And
Yeah.
then the last one is the Hideaway Disc Golf Course. If you're in Texas and you need to get a high level pro course, they now have
Yes.
two courses over there. Super awesome. Highly recommend them. Both pro level courses, or,
Yeah.
well, one pro level, one a little bit
Yeah.
shorter if you want to get those ace runs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hideaway is a great place to go, but they support me, so I appreciate.
Of course.
I appreciate you guys supporting the people that support me.
Yeah, you guys might recognize Armory Disc Golf. We had another team member from Armory Disc Golf, Tanner McCartney, on the show a couple weeks ago. So really cool how they're just building their Texas team. And dude, I never got to play Hideaway before leaving, so I gotta find a way to get there. I think by the time I left, it was like just a brand new
Hmm.
course because I've just now been seeing. So I
Yeah,
didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to go to it, but definitely I want to find a chance to get out there. So thank
they
you
also
for
have
being
golf
on the
carts,
show.
man.
Yeah, I know. I got to play some tournaments this upcoming year. I got a lot of work to do before that. So thank you guys so much for listening and tuning into the show. I really appreciate it. Here at Teach Play Disc Golf, we do a couple things. We want to always encourage you to go and teach someone disc golf. Be encouraging to them, whether it's actually taking someone to the course and working with them and just having fun, or just in a Discord server, on social media, just encouraging people, giving them some tips, helping out. Go ahead and teach people how to play. And then make sure that you yourself go out and play some disc golf this week. Uh, I won't be playing until Saturday and Sunday, but you guys go ahead and play. It'll be too dark for me by the time I get off work, but make sure you play. And that is it, everybody. Until next time, have a great round.